A commander standing between light and shadow while others cluster behind. Dominance, war chamber. A king calmly watching rivals bow to low. Controlled authority, royal court. Chapter 1 Reframe the battlefield. This chapter shatters the viewer's false neutrality. It replaces emotional morality with a survival lens, forcing a cold reassessment of why feeling nothing became a losing position. Chapter 2 The numbing mechanism. This chapter dissects how emotional shutdown is engineered and rewarded by institutions, relationships, and incentives. It exposes numbness as a controllable state others leverage for access and obedience. Chapter 3 The exploited archetypes. This chapter maps the predictable male patterns that get harvested. The stoic martyr, the loyal tool, the silent provider. It shows how each archetype is selected, drained, and discarded. Chapter 4 Escalation, nature, history, selection. This chapter deepens the threat through human nature, evolutionary pressure, and historical examples. It proves that power always feeds on the unreactive and the emotionally disarmed. Chapter 5 Strategic reanimation. This chapter installs a behavioral shift, selective feeling as a weapon, not a refuge. It outlines controlled responses, boundary enforcement, and strategic coldness that restores leverage. Chapter 6 Kill the old identity. This chapter executes the death of the harmless self-image. It replaces it with a sovereign identity built on calculation, dominance, and chosen detachment. Chapter 7 Final warning. Choose your tier. This chapter delivers a closing ultimatum and elite call to action. It draws a hard line between those who remain consumable and those who step into command. Chapter 1 Reframe the battlefield. You think feeling nothing is strength. You're wrong. Feeling nothing is a defensive posture adopted by people who already lost territory. It's not power. It's retreat dressed up as discipline. You didn't become numb by accident. You were trained there slowly by losses you couldn't afford to process and rules you were punished for questioning. Every time emotion cost you status, money, or leverage, you amputated a piece of yourself. Eventually, you mistook the absence of pain for control. That confusion is the trap. Here's the frame you were never given. Life is not a moral arena. It's a competitive environment. Outcomes don't reward goodness, patience, or loyalty. They reward positioning. And numbness is a terrible position. On a battlefield, soldiers who feel nothing don't fight better. They hesitate less until they freeze entirely. They wait for orders. They absorb damage without reacting. They become predictable. And predictable units get surrounded. The modern world doesn't attack you with force. It exploits your restraint. Systems, employers, partners, and institutions feed on men who don't react. Your silence is interpreted as consent. Your endurance is interpreted as capacity. Your emotional flatline signals unlimited extraction. You thought detachment made you untouchable. In reality, it made you easy to budget. This is the lens shift. Emotion is not weakness, uncontrolled emotion is. Feeling nothing isn't discipline. It's disarmament. Power doesn't come from being unresponsive. It comes from being selectively responsive. Predators don't feel nothing. They feel exactly what matters, exactly when it serves them. You were taught the opposite. That restraint equals virtue. That reacting equals losing. That being the bigger man means absorbing hits without returning pressure. That code was never designed to help you win. It was designed to keep you useful. Look around. Who advances fastest? Not the numb, the calibrated. The men who can apply warmth, threat, withdrawal, and focus like tools on command. They don't drown in emotion, but they don't erase it either. They weaponize it. Numbness collapses your range. No anger means no boundaries. No desire means no direction. No attachment means no leverage. You become neutral, and neutrality is the lowest rank in any hierarchy. This chapter forces one conclusion into your nervous system. You are not broken, you are mispositioned. The feeling of emptiness isn't enlightenment. It's a signal that your internal systems shut down to survive an environment that punished visibility. That adaptation kept you alive. It will not make you dominant. From this point forward, the question is not how to feel less. It's how to feel precisely. When to activate, when to withhold, when to signal threat, when to offer nothing. We are not here to comfort you. Comfort keeps you static. We are here to relocate you from prey ground to high ground. Drop the moral lens. Drop the self-pity. Drop the fantasy that neutrality protects you. The battlefield doesn't care how calm you are. It cares whether you can move, strike, and decide. And right now, numbness has you standing still. Chapter to the numbing mechanism. Numbness is not a personal flaw. It's a system response. It's what happens when an organism learns that expression is punished and compliance is rewarded. You weren't born empty. You were conditioned hollow. Here's how the mechanism works. First, emotion is framed as liability. Anger is labeled immature. Desire is called meatiness. Ambition becomes ego. Any internal signal that might disrupt stability is treated as a defect. You learn early that reacting costs you approval, access, or safety, so you suppress. Second, suppression is rewarded. You stay quiet during unfair treatment. You're called professional. You tolerate disrespect. You're seen as mature. You sacrifice without protest. You're labeled reliable. Each reward reinforces the behavior. The system doesn't want your strength. It wants your predictability. Over time, suppression becomes automation. You no longer feel the emotion rising. You intercept it before consciousness. The body still registers the threat, but the mind denies it. This creates a split. Externally calm, internally corroding. That split is the leverage point others exploit. People don't prey on emotional men, they prey on emotionally unavailable ones. The man who explodes is avoided. The man who endures is harvested. Why? Because endurance signals capacity without resistance. It tells the world you can absorb more. Numbness advertises unlimited storage. Employers load you with excess responsibility because you won't push back. Partners test boundaries because you don't react. Institutions rely on your silence to maintain imbalance. You think you're invisible. You're not. You're marked. This is the psychological extraction loop. You suppress emotion to avoid conflict. Suppression increases your tolerance. Increased tolerance invites heavier demands. Heavier demands deepen suppression. Eventually, you feel nothing and have nothing. At that stage, numbness feels like control because chaos has stopped. But chaos didn't disappear. It was internalized. You became the container. Here's the brutal inversion. Numb men don't scare anyone. They reassure systems. They stabilize dysfunction. They make exploitation efficient. Power structures fear volatility they can't predict. They don't fear emptiness. Emptiness is safe. Emptiness doesn't revolt. This is why numbness is socially encouraged in men. Not because it's healthy but because it's manageable. A man who feels nothing doesn't demand reciprocity. He doesn't threaten withdrawal. He doesn't disrupt flow. He adapts downward. And adaptation without agency is decay. Understand this clearly. Your emotional shutdown did not remove your needs. It removed your signals. The needs still exist. They just leak out as fatigue, apathy, quiet resentment, or self-sabotage. You don't confront the source, you bleed privately. That private bleeding keeps the structure intact. This mechanism is surgical. No one tells you to disappear. They just reward you every time you do. Eventually, you confuse being unproblematic with being powerful. They are opposites. Power is friction. Power creates cost. Power forces recalibration. Numbness creates none of that. It smooths edges. It lubricates abuse. The goal is not to feel again like a romantic revival. That's weak framing. The goal is to reclaim signal integrity, to restore the internal alarms you shut off so you can choose when to deploy them. Until then, you are operating with muted instruments in a hostile environment. And hostile environments don't spare the quiet. They consume them. Chapter 3: The Exploited Archetypes. Once numbness sets in, you don't become unique. You become legible. Systems don't exploit individuals, they exploit patterns. And you have been sorted into one. There are 3 primary male archetypes that numbness produces. Each feels different from the inside. From the outside, they are identical, useful, quiet, replaceable. The Stoic martyr. This man believes endurance equals honor. He absorbs pressure without complaint, wears fatigue like a badge, and confuses suffering with virtue. He tells himself that if he can outlast the pain, he will be rewarded. He won't. The system reads his silence as consent and his resilience as capacity, so it gives him more weight, never authority. The loyal tool. This one is addicted to alignment. He commits early, defends institutions that would discard him instantly, and mistakes loyalty for leverage. He thinks being indispensable protects him. It does the opposite. Tools are only valuable while functioning. The moment he dulls, he's replaced without ceremony. The silent provider. He supplies resources, stability, and emotional containment while asking for nothing. He prides himself on being low maintenance. that pride becomes his leash. The less he asks, the less he receives. His contribution becomes baseline. Baseline effort is invisible. Each archetype is built on the same psychological flaw, the belief that self-erasure earns security. It doesn't. These archetypes persist because they feel safe. None of them risk confrontation. None of them force renegotiation. None of them disrupt flow. They are predictable assets in any hierarchy. And hierarchies don't promote assets. They extract from them. Here's the uncomfortable truth. If you recognize yourself in any of these, it's not because you're weak. It's because you were optimized for stability, not sovereignty. You learned early that being useful kept you included. So you doubled down on usefulness and abandoned leverage. But usefulness without threat is servitude. Notice the common behavior across all three. They delay reaction. They internalize blame. They overfunction. They wait to be noticed. Waiting is fatal in competitive environments. Attention flows upward toward friction, not downward toward reliability. The man who causes recalculation is watched. The man who absorbs is forgotten. These archetypes are not identities. They are positions. And positions can be exited. If you're willing to lose the approval that kept you there, most aren't, because there's a hidden payoff. Numbness protects them from rejection. If you don't ask, you can't be denied. If you don't want, you can't be disappointed. If you don't push, you can't lose, but you also can't win. The archetypes survive, but they never advance. They stabilize other people's ascent. They become the floor others stand on. This chapter isn't meant to shame you. Shame is useless. This is classification. Once you see the pattern, you can't pretend it's personal misfortune. It's structural placement. And placement determines outcome. The next phase will strip away any illusion that this is a modern anomaly. This is not about culture. It's about human nature and what happens, always, to men who mute their signals in competitive systems. Chapter 4: Escalation, Nature, History, Selection. If you think this is a modern problem, you're underestimating the pattern. Numb men have always existed, and they have always been consumed first. Strip away technology, ideology, and comfort. What remains is selection. Environments reward traits that secure resources and punish. Traits that allow extraction. Human nature hasn't changed. Only the methods have. In primitive hierarchies, the unreactive male was assigned labor. He carried weight. He held the line. He didn't challenge leadership. He was fed just enough to function. When scarcity arrived, he was expendable. This wasn't cruelty. It was efficiency. Selection is not moral. It's mathematical. Throughout history, empires were not built by the calm, they were built by the responsive. Men who could switch states fast, negotiate, threaten, withdraw, attack. Those who stayed emotionally flat were relegated to maintenance roles. Stability, not command. Modern systems refined this process. They don't need to kill you. They just need you docile. Corporations, bureaucracies, and social structures reward emotional suppression because it lowers friction. A numb man doesn't unionize. He doesn't renegotiate. He doesn't leave when exploited. He rationalizes. That rationalization is fatal. Look at relationship dynamics. The man who doesn't care isn't respected. He's tested. Boundaries are pushed until there's a reaction or confirmation that there will never be one. Once confirmed, the extraction accelerates. Attention flows toward the partner who can create consequence. This isn't cruelty. It's calibration. Every social system runs constant tests. How much pressure before response? How much delay before resistance? Numbness fails every test. It communicates infinite tolerance. In war, soldiers who lose emotional range don't become elite, they become liabilities. They miss threat cues. They freeze under sudden change. Modern training doesn't eliminate emotion. It channels it. Fear sharpens perception. Anger fuels decisive action. Remove those, and you remove adaptability. The same applies socially. You were sold the lie that emotional neutrality equals superiority, that you're above it, that detachment makes you untouchable. History says the opposite. Detachment makes you irrelevant. Power flows to those who can impose cost. Selection doesn't favor the nicest, the calmest, or the most loyal. It favors the most responsive to threat and opportunity. Always has. Always will. This is why numb men disappear quietly, not in dramatic failure but in stagnation. Years pass. Effort accumulates. Nothing compounds. They wake up one day older, depleted, and confused about where the time went. It went into other people's outcomes. Understand this, human systems do not protect those who self-neutralize. They exploit them until efficiency drops, then replace them. The environment doesn't hate you. It simply responds to your signals. And your signals say, safe to use. The escalation is already happening. Costs increase. Returns diminish. Respect plateaus. You feel it as a low-grade pressure you can't name. That's not burnout. That's selection tightening. This chapter removes your final excuse. This is not bad luck. This is not unfairness. This is not culture gone wrong. This is what happens when a man removes friction from himself in a competitive species. The next step is the only step that matters. Behavior change. Not affirmations. Not catharsis. Strategy. Because insight without action just makes you a conscious resource. Chapter 5: Strategic Reanimation. Numbness must be replaced, not healed. Healing implies damage. This is reconfiguration. The goal is not to feel more. The goal is to restore controlled volatility, the ability to create consequence on demand. Power does not come from emotional expression. It comes from emotional deployment. You start by reclaiming one forbidden response: friction. Right now, your behavior is frictionless. You comply quickly. You respond fully. You absorb quietly. This makes you efficient, and efficiency without leverage is submission. Strategic reanimation begins by slowing compliance. Delay responses. Reduce availability. Introduce pause. Pause forces recalibration. Silence used to erase you. Now it becomes pressure. Next, boundaries without explanation. Numb men over-explain because they fear conflict. Powerful men state limits and let discomfort do the work. Every justification is a negotiation. Every negotiation weakens position. Say less, mean it more. Then comes selective aggression, not rage. Not explosion, but assertive disruption. When terms shift against you, you don't adapt downward. You interrupt the flow. You challenge assumptions. You withdraw effort. Systems respond immediately to loss of input. This is how leverage is restored. Emotion is the fuel here, not the product. Anger becomes signal, not outburst. Desire becomes direction, not neediness. Detachment becomes tactic, not default. You are learning to use emotion, not drown in it. Another critical shift: stop proving value. Numb men constantly demonstrate usefulness because they fear disposability. This keeps them trapped. Value is not proven through effort, it's implied through scarcity. The less accessible you are, the more attention consolidates. Availability is a liability. Reanimation also requires one uncomfortable sacrifice: approval. You cannot maintain a frictionless image and gain power simultaneously. Someone must be dissatisfied. Let it be them, not you. Expect resistance. Systems push back when extraction slows. Guilt, moral framing, urgency all deployed to restore your old position. This is not feedback. It's containment. Do not argue. Do not justify. Hold position. This phase feels dangerous because you are no longer hiding. Visibility returns. So does risk. That's the cost of sovereignty. Safety was never neutral, it was rented, and the rent keeps rising. Strategic reanimation is successful when people adjust behavior around you. Demands become requests. Silence creates anticipation, not neglect. Withdrawal produces response. That's how you know the system is recalculating. This chapter does not make you kind. It makes you effective. Kindness without leverage is charity. Charity without choice is exploitation. You are not becoming cold. You are becoming selective. The final step is irreversible. It requires killing the identity that survived by disappearing and installing one that survives by command. Chapter 6: Kill the old identity. This is where most men fail, not because the strategy is unclear but because the cost is final. The numb version of you kept you alive by minimizing exposure. He avoided conflict, softened reactions, lowered expectations. That identity was adaptive once. It is now obsolete. And obsolete tools don't get upgraded. They get discarded. You cannot carry that identity forward. Identity is not personality. It's behavior under pressure. And your old behavior tells the world one thing: I will absorb to remain included. That signal must die. This isn't self-improvement. It's identity execution. The old identity survives on 3 lies. If I stay agreeable, I'll be safe. If I don't react, I can't lose. If I endure long enough, I'll be rewarded. All 3 are false. Safety was conditional. Non-reaction was loss delayed. Endurance was never rewarded, only exploited. You don't modify this identity, you sever it. That means allowing friction without apology, letting relationships strain, letting silence stretch, letting others experience the discomfort you used to carry for them. This feels like betrayal because the old identity was built on self-sacrifice. But sacrifice without sovereignty is erasure. The replacement identity is not louder. It's heavier. It moves less. But when it moves, systems adjust. It does not seek validation. It does not rush to explain. It does not overfunction to stay relevant. It enforces cost. This identity understands one principle above all others. Respect is generated by consequence, not intention. You don't need to be cruel. You need to be undeniable. The emotional range returns but under command. Anger appears briefly, then disappears. Desire is focused, not scattered. Detachment is chosen, not default. You are no longer emotionally flat. You are emotionally armed. There will be fallout. Some people benefited from your absence of boundaries. They will frame your shift as coldness, arrogance, or selfishness. That framing is irrelevant. It's a containment attempt. Do not correct the narrative. Let outcomes speak. The moment you stop cushioning others from your withdrawal, you step into a new tier, one where your presence has weight and your absence creates disturbance. That is the marker of sovereignty. This chapter ends the old agreement you had with the world. I will disappear to be tolerated. The new agreement is simpler. I will be respected or I will not participate. There is no return path after this, only replacement. Chapter 7, Final Warning. Choose your tier. This is the last frame you'll be given. After this, there are no techniques left, only consequences. Every system sorts men into tiers, not by virtue, not by effort, by cost. How expensive are you to ignore? How disruptive is your absence? How quickly does your withdrawal force recalibration? Most men never ask this question. They stay numb, useful, and confused as the years drain out of them. They mistake survival for progress. They call stagnation peace. It isn't. You now understand the split. On one side are the consumable men who absorb pressure, mute signals, and stabilize structures that give them nothing back. On the other are the sovereign men who limit access, enforce boundaries, and create consequence without noise. There is no middle tier. Neutrality collapses downward. Here is the final warning. The world does not need you numb. It needs you predictable. And predictability is the chain. Once your pattern is known, your ceiling is fixed. Break the pattern or accept the role. From this point forward, every interaction is a test. Do you respond immediately or deliberately? Do you explain or enforce? Do you endure or withdraw? Small behaviors reveal tier placement faster than any declaration. You will be tempted to revert. Numbness is familiar. It feels clean. It feels safe. But safety without leverage is just delayed replacement. Do not seek revenge. That's reactive and small. Seek positioning. Positioning compounds. The elite are not emotionless. They are selective participants. They enter exchanges that benefit them and exit those that don't without guilt, without drama, without explanation. If you take nothing else from this, feeling nothing is not the goal. Being unexploitable is. You already know which tier you've been operating in. The only question left is whether you're willing to lose the approval that kept you there. Choose.